Alright, this is an update for anybody who decided to watch the Hoarder House of Horrors Part 1 video. This is going to be an incredibly brief Part 2. When I told you that I am doing this strictly because I want justice for the victims and that I was gonna work really hard to make sure that you got any updates Darby offered up, I meant it. It is currently 7:30 in the morning. I am fresh out of bed, but I saw a new video from her and I thought it was important to share it with all of you because it is a call to action video for anyone who is like, I want to be able to help her more. I think she's doing great work, but I'm not on TikTok. I don't know what to do. This is going to be the video to watch because this is the one that's going to actually tell you how you can help if you felt a little bit helpless in the last one.
Hi, this video is a call to action. I need your help. Whether this is the first time you're seeing me, or maybe you've been keeping up with the story since the very beginning. Gerald Brown's preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. There's a large effort being made to identify as many of his victims as possible. There are a lot, and a lot that we don't know about. I need your help because TikTok has actually helped bring evidence forward. And as many people that know about the story, the better. This man was not just victimizing girls, women, and boys in Harrisburg. He traveled across the country and he traveled across the world. The way that I need your help is, please, if you feel called to, reposting my content helps, stitching it, duetting it, talking about it, posting about it on other social platforms. If you look up Gerald Brown Harrisburg arrest, you will find all of the articles and the phone numbers to call if you or somebody you know has been victimized by him. We want social media to help do its thing, I want to find every single victim that there has ever been by this man so that he can receive due justice and never breathe fresh air again. That's our call to action.
It has also very much not escaped my notice that my Hoarding House of Horrors Part 1 video is simply not getting the views that are necessary to really push this case forward. I understand why Darby is on TikTok. However, the problem with that is, even by TikTok standards, she's really not getting the views that she needs on this story to really push it forward, especially with only 2 weeks left to really find as much evidence as possible and as many victims as possible of this case. So this is why I'm trying to ask you guys for help, because I am a microscopic sized YouTuber right now. If you have more subscribers than I do, and you are involved in any capacity with true crime on the internet, whether that's on YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, wherever, I ask that you share my Hoarding House of Horrors video series there, and I ask that if you are comfortable with it, you create your own content around this case as well, because I am just not pulling the numbers that I was hoping I would in order to really benefit anyone involved in this case. So please share as much as you can of this story. Make sure that you're talking about it on different social media platforms. Make sure you're making your own content. That is the only way that this man is going to get what he deserves, which is the rest of his lifetime in suffering. If he was able to make these women and small children suffer for decades, he can suffer for decades too, however long he still has left on this planet. So yeah, that is currently the biggest update that we have. I was actually pleasantly shocked to hear that they are starting his case that quickly. Historically, that is a bit unusual. They don't really expedite most cases, and the fact that it's already going to court in a couple of weeks is amazing. But as she mentioned in her video, it's also a little scary because that leaves people like Darby with very little time to try to collect evidence and to try to find as many victims as she possibly can. So just like I said at the end of my first video, really think, guys. I mean, this guy wasn't just in Harrisburg. It turns out he was doing this all through the United States. So if you can remember his face it doesn't matter what he was doing. I don't care if he was just pumping gas. I don't care if he was in the grocery store. I don't care if he was at the DMV. If you remember his face, make sure that you call Harrisburg police and you tell them that you have a tip about him and that you remembered somewhere like circa, 1997, seeing him in a very specific town in the United States, because knowing what this guy's history was, chances are he was not there for an innocent vacation. And remember, absolutely no form of information is trivial. No form of information doesn't matter in some capacity when it comes to this case. Every little bit they can collect is going to help put this man behind bars for the rest of his life so that his victims at least have some form of justice. So it does matter, even if all you can remember is vaguely seeing him. Like I said, if they at least kind of know where he was operating out of at a certain point in time, they can use that to their advantage, because they can backtrack and try to find victims in that area, because it's very likely he has some. There might not be evidence per se, because it sounds like he always brought that back home with him, but they're still looking for the people that this man hurt. I'm sure that a lot of you who have been following this case closely are also wondering whether or not there have been any updates outside of Darby's video. I have still only found a handful of news articles, most of which are very local to the Harrisburg area. So unfortunately, unless for whatever reason you're monitoring Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, chances are you are not getting those news articles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what you can already see behind me right now, the actual police record of him, as well as a halfway decent article that I found on this entire story. I'm going to read that to you. There was a slightly better news article that I found. Unfortunately, it was behind a paywall, which truly irked the shit out of me. If something is an ongoing investigation, it still hasn't gone to court. They're trying to compile as much evidence as they can still. I don't think you should be allowed to put it behind a paywall, because it's going to bar many people from getting the information that they need. But beyond that, let's look into this right now. So here we have Harrisburg Bureau of Police, Gerald Brown, 4 counts, child pornography, 4 counts, disem photo, film of child sex, 2 counts, photographing, videotaping, depicting on computer or filming sexual act, 1 count, sell obscene sexual material, so he sold it apparently, 1 count, burglary, which is, if you watched my Hoarding House of Horrors Part 1 video, that was when he realized the cops were onto him, and he broke the lock to get into the house, even though that house is now owned by a man, guys. For any of you trying to use this as a dark tourist destination, because unfortunately that has happened, Darby's had to speak out about the fact that it's getting bad enough there right now that she's had to put up police tape. She's had to put up security, have people there monitoring overnight, not only for Gerald Brown because he tried to break in, but because people are using it as a dark tourism destination. Do not do that, one, without permission. Even if it is a place that has been run down and unusable for a very long time, chances are someone technically legally owns that property. Always make sure you're getting permission before doing dark tourism or paranormal investigation, what have you, because people have been arrested for that in the past, guys. People have been arrested numerous times because they didn't realize they needed permission to visit a certain premises. So make sure you're safe. For goodness sakes, make sure you're safe. You also just don't know who's lurking around in an area like this. This was a hoarder house. Anyone could have just been hiding anywhere in that house before it was cleaned out. That is a danger to you and to whoever could be in the house at the time. Second, do not do dark tourism at a place that is part of an active crime scene investigation. You don't know what evidence you could be disturbing. Darby has found evidence all over the house, even in the floorboards, the fucking closets, under the piles of garbage. She's found it inside radiators. You don't know what evidence you could be disturbing, and they're down to the wire. They only have 2 weeks to try to find as much as they can right now. Do not accidentally screw up this investigation because you want to have a spooky session there and be like, oh, I'm at the Hoarding House of Horrors in Harrisburg, PA right now. Give me a bunch of views and likes. Not worth destroying evidence in this case and keeping these people from getting the justice that they need. Third, this home legally belongs to someone. There is a man who actually bought this house. He owns it. He can legally have you arrested for trespassing if you decide to do dark tourism there right now. And I honestly hope he does. If you honestly want to go to a place like this, knowing it's part of an active investigation, you deserve, frankly, to be arrested for that. So let's get back to this again. So he's 73. Warrant details: criminal. Date issued Monday, January 20th, 2025. Issuing authority and Harrisburg Police Bureau. The Harrisburg police are seeking the whereabouts of Gerald Brown, who is wanted for various misdemeanor and felony sex crimes, corruption charges, and burglary. Brown is wanted in connection to a large pornographic cache he had created and collected. Much of the pornographic material contained unsuspecting minors. Although Brown has been charged, the investigation is still ongoing. Anyone with information on the material or acts that Brown was engaged in is asked to contact the Harrisburg police and asked to speak with a detective. And I mentioned earlier in this video that he traveled worldwide, so who knows what states or other countries he was doing this stuff in. So if you're in a state or a country where it's going to be too expensive for you to call the phone number on the screen, they told you to just go to the Crime Watch website. Make sure that you go to www.crimewatchpa.com and you report a tip there if you have one, because they're trying very hard to get this information out there as fast as possible. So now we're going to look at another article. This is from Fox 43. This is a local Harrisburg news station. I'm reading you this one because this one basically gives you the story as a whole thus far. As far as I'm aware, they are trying to keep it as updated as they can. They just haven't had much to report in the past week. But as you can see, police given child pornography content left in home, bought in tax sale. Harrisburg man arrested. A Harrisburg man faces various charges after police were given multiple boxes found in a home of photographs and videos of nude juvenile females, some being in unconscious states. That is the audio recording I showed you at the beginning of the part 1 of this series, where Darby was in a lot of distress because of what she saw on the first tape. That's what that's alluding to. The Harrisburg Bureau of Police was dispatched to the 1900 block of Chestnut Street on February 15th when a caller was concerned about items found in a home that was purchased from a tax sale. Police arrived at the scene and spoke to an individual who was hired to help clean out the property. While cleaning out the home, she found a box with photographs of nude females, with officers reporting that they were unconscious. That was Darby. They're talking about Darby right there. You'll notice in the few articles you can find on this case that they always refer to her as just a female hired to clean. Darby does not want to be identified outside of being called Darby or Darby's Online, her TikTok and Instagram name. Unfortunately, just like people have done dark tourism here, people have decided to just dox Darby, which I think that says a lot about you. There was an article, I believe she mentioned, that just mentioned her by first and last name, and she did not consent to this at all. I'm going to leave you the video of that right here because I think it's very important.
Hey y'all. Today, me with my little toolbox. There's already security at the house, but now it's all over the internet. It's fine if the address is on the internet. I knew that that was going to happen at some point until Michael Fuller from WGAL Channel 9 decided, after I declined to be interviewed, reason being I got bad vibes from him. He shows up here and he films the entire street, talk to the neighbor, show the front of the house, show the street number, and then show the affidavit in which my first and last name is on there.
That wasn't okay. She did not want to do an interview. She didn't want to be identified outside of how she is on social media. It doesn't matter if you can easily find the information online. You simply shouldn't share it with people when someone says no. No means no. You'd think that if they're reporting on this case, they'd understand that. Police also found nude images of the previous homeowner, who was identified as Gerald Brown, along with post office receipts and a VHS tape of a young female doing erotic modeling, according to police. And in one of Darby's old video, that model that was just mentioned, that was an 11-year-old girl posing seductively for him. Sick fuck. On February 17th, police were dispatched to the same home for an unwanted person at the residence. On the scene, a contractor hired to do work told police that Brown and his nephew were inside the home. He stated they did not have permission to enter and they had cut a lock to enter. Now, I had seen a video from Darby where she mentioned the fact that Brown himself had cut a lock and broken into the home because he wanted to get the photographs out and stuff before the police could get any more. I did not know his nephew was involved in that too. Remember how in part one of this series, I mentioned the fact that it severely weirded me out that it seemed like his mother and his sister, at the very least, knew he was doing this stuff and chose to just keep it from police? This further proves his family is somewhat in on it. Even if they weren't actively engaging in the acts that he was, they covered this up for him. They did everything in their power to ensure he wouldn't get in trouble and get more jail time. I really hope detectives or whoever is involved in this case question his family members, because this is the third family member we have now who has said something or done something involved in the criminal stuff he was doing. An officer spoke to Brown at the scene, and Brown asked to enter the home to take any photographs he could find on the floor. His request was denied, and he was asked to leave the property. No shit. The individual hired to help clean the home advised officers that she had found more photographs and videos inside. Taking a closer look, officers saw similar photographs to the ones in the first box that was found. These had the home's address on them, along with a stamp of Gerald Brown Photography on the back of them. And the Gerald Brown Photography thing kept coming up throughout Darby's searches of the house. My suspicion, and also a couple people in her comment suspicion, is since a lot of this happened in the mid 90s, we think he may have been one of those skeevy dudes who had a kiosk at the malls, because malls were hopping back in the 90s, and he would find pretty attractive young girls and say, hey, I am a photographer. I can get you a modeling contract. These girls would think it was a real thing. Or if it was a minor, their moms would be like, oh, this is, your foot in the door. My kid's going to be famous. They would go there, and it turned out they were these horrible, horrible guys. This happened more often than it should have. And unfortunately, a lot of people do tend to blame the victims and be like, how could you be so stupid? If they're a minor, they're just going to go along with what their parents are doing. And back then, it wasn't unusual for people to be scouted. Nowadays, it's more a Nepo baby thing, but you did still get scouted back in the 90s. So it happens. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. On February 18th, officers and an investigator went through the house to record what it had looked like to collect evidence. Police also came into possession of several video cameras that had tape in them. On March 25th, police had interviewed the new homeowner. He had stated that he had got the home through a tax sale in September of 2024. When he received the deed in early January 2025, he waited 30 days for the previous owner to come back and claim what was inside. The previous owner, Brown, never came back to retrieve his items. Interesting that he just left a hoarder house and only suddenly cared when it was too late and he realized, oh, the police have got the stuff. I think because it was a hoarder house, he was hoping they would just have big shovels come through and just get rid of everything for him. And that didn't happen. This is when the homeowner found the photos and videos and collected as much as possible to give to the police. After Brown and his nephew had tried breaking into the home in February, the homeowner received an apology letter from Brown for breaking in and offering him money to get the items he left behind. And this is that lovely video you saw where he said, I'll buy back my bedroom furniture, and Darby decided to just take a hammer to all of it. Good. He didn't own it anymore. The gall of this guy with what he's charged with to only apologize to the homeowner for breaking a lock and not apologizing to the women whose lives he ruined. Wow. So, I know you probably already saw it behind me, but huge trigger warning because I'm going to read out what they found on the tapes and the photographs. And I mean, you know what this case is about by now, so I don't know how bad this is going to be. Victim 1. A VHS tape shows a female in brown sitting in the living room, and the recording device appears to be hidden. The female drinks a small amount of liquid and quickly becomes intoxicated. She is then incapacitated and is sexually assaulted by Brown. Police identified the woman, who would have been 14 at the time, and she was unaware those incidents had occurred. It was filmed around 1995. This was the audio recording I showed you guys when Darby just said something like local news on the tape or something, so she thought it was this really mundane thing, and she was in incredible distress watching the video. And it's also the girl who didn't remember this happening. That's how intoxicated he had this 14-year-old girl. She didn't even remember this happening to her. This is the one that the police came to her, asked for her identity, and then showed her a video. And the only reason she knew she was assaulted is because cops showed her a video of it. And I still just can't imagine the pain she's gone through. Victim 2. Brown was filming a juvenile female putting on makeup. Brown also records himself and her in a bed close together. There is another tape of the same female who is dancing in a dress in front of Brown as he sits on a couch. She also modeled swimsuits for him while he photographed and videotaped her. Police identified the victim, who would have been 11 years old at the time. The images and videos were dated 2004. And I don't care if she wasn't nude. I don't care if she wasn't in like a gimpy bikini or something. The fact of the matter is he wasn't videoing this because it was cute and that was his child. It was done with like gross, devious intent. That's why it still matters. Victim 3. Multiple photographs were recovered of an exposed female in a state of unconsciousness. This female was 17 years old at the time. These were dated 1997 and 1998. After reviewing and gathering the evidence inside the home, Brown was arrested on Monday, April 7th. And that's the end of the best article I have for this story. This man did not seem to just like hanging out with women. He would invite them over with the express intention to hurt them. Somebody has seen something. Somebody remembers something. The police are not going to make you give personal information. If you are scared of this man, or if you don't want, press on you or something, you are allowed to call these tips in completely anonymously. As soon as you call them, even if you walk into the station, you can say, I want this to be an anonymous tip. I don't want to be involved in this case. They will respect that. They don't want to put you in an awkward situation. They want to get justice for the victims. Likewise, if you're nervous to call in a tip because you don't want the heat of having to stand in court like Darby is, you don't have to do that. If you call in a tip, you're not going to be standing in court with her, guys. She is choosing to do that because she is the one who found the evidence. She is directly involved with this case. That is the reason she's likely to have to stand up in court. You are not going to have to do that as an anonymous tipper unless you remember very specific things from around the time he was doing the worst of what he was doing and you agree to it. Chances are you won't have to testify unless you are a full-blown witness or one of the victims that he had throughout the years. So I don't want you to worry about that. I don't want that to put you off of helping with this case in any way that you can. And even if you have never seen this man before in your life, even if you looked at that picture and it meant absolutely nothing to you, you're like, nope, this is the first time I'm seeing him, that's fine. The power is still in your hands to share this story. Share my videos about it because Darby is only on TikTok. I mentioned that before. She's only on TikTok. So if you're not on TikTok, you're just not going to see this. Even by TikTok standards, it's not getting that much attention on there. It's getting more than she would have on other platforms. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not getting a lot, unfortunately. So she needs people to share the story. If you have access to her TikTok videos, share those everywhere you can. If you have, links to my videos here where I am doing updates on this case, share those everywhere you can. I'm especially having issues getting it shared on Reddit. I wanted to share this story on Reddit because Reddit has a lot of true crime junkies on it who like to be an active part of an investigation. This is their chance to, but Reddit itself is barring me from doing that. It is not allowing me to share my videos on the platform or anything about this case, unfortunately. Even though I'm censoring my words, I'm being very careful and very intentional with what I say, it's all getting flagged as, not appropriate for Reddit. So I need your help. If you are very active on Reddit and you think that you might be able to put my videos anywhere on there, please do so with as much of a description as you can, because we really are down to the wire now. We have a couple of weeks to try to do as much as we humanly can to ensure that whatever judge ends up overhearing this case is like, this man is less than the scum of the earth and he deserves nothing but the worst for the rest of time.